Don't ever tell them though. Anyway, G'day jabronis of the UBC. It is your major analysts, the Verd and Senor D-pad Gamer. Introduce yourself, sir.
What's up, guys? D-pad Gamer, coach of the Orlando City Superiors here, and we're going to be covering all of the teams for Season 3.
Yeah, if you are joining us, then the draft has happened. You definitely know that a lot of people had their plans in the draft from the preseason interviews that you saw, but now you're going to be able to actually see how each team went. So basically what D-pad and I are going to do today is, we're not necessarily going to rank the teams in the drafts, because that's going to come in the post-draft power rankings that you'll see later on. Basically our aim today is just to recap what everybody's done, and we're going to look at things that we think have been done really well, and things that we feel have been done, quite poorly, and kind of go from there. So without further ado, are you ready to go, man? Are you ready for this?
I am ready to go. Let's do this.
Okay, well, let's begin with numero uno, which is, I don't know why I'm talking a lot of Spanish today. It's weird. It's weird. We're going to start with the New York Metagross and RG the Awesome. So what's jumping out at you first when you see this team?
Well, so I'm trying to go based on realistically what I think is good, not what I prefer, because I think Volcanion is highly overrated. I don't think it's a first pick kind of situation. That said, it is a monster. So I like that he has a Volcanion, he's got a Sylveon, which is really good. Gliscor is a nasty wall. My biggest concern with his team, I think, is that he doesn't really have, Volcanion is a single mon and you get water and fire. You need the grass to complete the core, and he doesn't have that.
No, I definitely agree. I think Volcanion actually in this format is fantastic. I think actually paired with Sylveon, it's very, very good. They do deal with each other's weaknesses quite nicely, but there are definitely a few big holes, I feel, with his team that can be very much exploited. Like you said, not having the grass type is going to be really, really detrimental. Also, one of the bigger things that I have noticed is that a lot of his defensive walls are very easy setup fodder. For example, you're looking at your things like Fortress and P2. Substitute attackers are going to have a field day against them. But I must say, defensively speaking, he does have the Druddigon, which is a good makeshift defender. Not a huge fan of the Palpitoad pick, especially since, it is his primary water, because I see Volcanion more as a fire type than a water type, to be actually honest with you. I feel that it's an okay team. Mega Pinsir's interesting on it. Galvantula and Mega Pinsir could be cool, because one of the things Mega Pinsir does struggle with is those Scarf types that come in on it, so that could be pretty clutch. But also, I found using Mega Pinsir in the past, it's very difficult to set up that SD quite freely. So he's definitely going to have to use, I think, Sylveon with Baton Pass, U-Turn from Gliscor, Volt Switch from Fortress and all that, to try and get the momentum for Pinsir to set up. But I just, I don't know, I'm not a huge fan of the balance of the team. I feel like it can be quite easily broken down.
Yeah, and going like we said, we're talking about the grass. I mean, his last two, mons, Rhyperior and Palpitoad, are 4 times weak to grass. So he's got a lot of 4 times weak units. I mean, Gliscor is 4 times weak to ice. Fortress is 4 times weak to fire. Then you've got Rhyperior and Palpitoad, which are 4 times weak to grass, and Rhyperior is 4 times weak to water. So you've got, I mean, you put a Mew on his opponent's team with a Life Orb and all the coverage moves, and he can sweep if he brings all of those mons.
That is true. The unfortunate thing is that Mew has not been drafted by anybody this season, so
yeah,
that happened.
Well, you get my point.
I do. I think the other big thing to note is that Gliscor is the only Pokemon in his team that really wants to be taking ground type attacks. Like, if you think of your classic ground type Pokemon like your Landorus's and whatnot, they pretty much run through his team, because P2, most ground types have access to knockoff, so it's not really a threat to them. And Mega Pinsir, most ground types have access to the Stone Edge, so that is another big issue, is dealing with ground types as well as just general types, and basically everything. I think offensively it's pretty sweet, but defensively he is going to struggle this season. But let's move on.
So, okay.
let's move on, just because like we don't want to be talking too long, because of course when we get to the power rankings we can talk a bit more in depth about how we feel they're going to go for the season per se. This is more just looking at the team on face value. So
Absolutely.
let's move on to the Broadway Blastoise. I actually think this is a really, really nice team. I think this is actually quite a nice team, but let me know what you think first.
So I'm looking at it here, and I love it. I mean, to me, if you have Mega Venusaur and Rotom Wash on a team, you're already terrifying because you're immune to ground, you're resisting ground. I mean, you've got a sweet combination there, and then on top of it, you throw Darmanitan. It's like that Fire Water Grass core is terrifying. So that's awesome. I think Diancie is actually a pretty decent fairy type that doesn't get drafted very often. And I really like, having the he's also got a nice core with Latias and where was it? And Umbreon. So he's got two cores. He's got his Fire Water Grass and his Dragon Steel and Fairy.
Yeah, definitely the positives from this team is Latias and Taunty, very fast Pokemon, can definitely do very good roles for his team. He has fantastic Volt Turn core, and he does have the Fairy Dragon Steel and the Fire Water Grass. One thing I'm not a big fan of is Cobalion, in the sense that it has to be his designated Steel type. I prefer a Steel type that, is able to fully resist flying. Now, don't get me wrong, I know he has a Rotom Wash as his flying type check, which is great, but the other thing is that Cobalion does not resist the Psychic type. Now, you might be thinking Psychic isn't too big of a deal when he has an Umbreon, but if you look a bit more closely at his team, Umbreon is pretty much his only way of preventing Psychic types, and almost every single team is going to be packing one, so I definitely feel like that is a bit of a flaw. The other big thing as well is that aside from Mega Venusaur and maybe Darmanitan, Fairy types also are a huge issue for this team. Darmanitan obviously can come in on them, but it's like still going to take a ton because Darmanitan's defenses aren't great, and so Mega Venusaur is going to be doing the bulk of the work, taking on basically any fairy that comes this way. And if you're looking at things like I don't know if Mega Gardevoir got drafted, but definitely Sylveon even. Sylveon with an expert belt running the Psyshock is really going to hurt the Venusaur, so it's definitely like that's where I think just having a straight Steel type instead of just Cobalion could have been really helpful. But I do really like the picks. Like you said, Diancie is really solid. I really like Dugtrio on his team being able to trap things, and I also really like Jinx having that Water Absorb, the Dry Skin, which is like Water Absorb kind of, is a really nice tech for his team. Not that he was really worried about Water type since he has a Rotom Wash, a Latias, and a Mega Venusaur, but it's still a really cool typing for his team to have. So it's not the worst team. I just feel that again the cores aren't perfect, and I feel like certain types are going to cause him issues. So we'll have to wait and see how he goes with that. But anyway, let's move on to our next team, which is the Boston Keldios. Now, straight away you see Landorus, T, and Victini, but is the rest of the team kind of overall as strong as those first two picks?
It depends on how you use it, really. My biggest concern is you put a solid U-turner on this team, and they're going to cause a lot of damage. I mean, Victini takes neutral Celebes times 4. Metagross will, get hit by a Claydol, Leavanny. They all get hit by U-turn pretty hard. So, I mean, you get a nice Volt turn core here, and I think the team's in trouble.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the other big things that I noticed initially looking at this team is this team also hates knockoff. Like, sure, you have Mega Diancie and you have a Togetic, but Togetic doesn't want to get knocked off and loses Eviolite. Everything's getting hurt by that, and even Mega Diancie isn't going to appreciate it because obviously when it Mega Evolves, its defenses aren't as solid. His hazard removal isn't ideal. Like Togetic, I don't really see him bringing Togetic a lot to these battles. I don't think it's very good in this format at all. Claydol's not too bad, but as a rapid spinner, most Ghost types can actually handle it pretty decently, especially since they're super effective against him. And Mega Diancie isn't always a consistent way of dealing with hazards, as a lot of the Pokemon that can set up hazards are ground types, with one Earthquake being able to destroy Mega Diancie. That being said though, One thing that I really like on his team is the fact that he has Lee Vanny. Now, Lee Vanny setting up sticky webs for this team is terrifying when you look at things like Blaziken and Victini, which are actually two completely different fire types. Victini can bust through, both of them can bust through on the special and physical side, but Victini with a fire psychic and the Blaziken with the firefighting can basically deal with almost any kind of threat. Bulky Waters can't really deal with both of them either, as they have ways to break through them. Lando T is a really nice way as well to get around with U-turn, as well as being a solid hazard setter for the team. I feel maybe, again, it's a situation where defensively this team doesn't look too solid. I feel like, Suicune's okay defensively, but other than that, there's no real solid defensive walls on his team, so he could struggle a little bit in that sense. But I also feel like this is the kind of team that can put a lot of pressure on opponents, so it could turn out really well for him, but it could also definitely backfire him. We'll have to wait and see. But let's move on to the next team now. Jack, obviously, the Maryland Mienshaos, he is returning for his third season of the UBC here, and I think... Oh, one thing we should mention, guys, that we kind of see on our sheets here that I should tell D-Pad. Jack was able to redraft that Raichu into Pangoro. So
sweet.
Keep that in mind. Yeah, because he realized he had Thunderous Incarnate already, so that is actually a Pangoro there, which I think even makes his team more terrifying. But you tell me a bit. You tell me a bit.
Yeah, no, I definitely see what you're saying there. It was kind of a redundancy between Thundo and Raichu, so I like a lot of his picks. He's got a decent speed tier going on, especially with if you scarf like Togekiss or Mamo. So I like his core. I really like that he's got some decent walls, like Seismitoad and Miltank. So, and I overall I think it's a pretty solid team. There's not really any big glaring weakness that I see.
Nothing else you really want to discuss on there? Because I'm going to go ham on it if you don't.
Oh, go for it.
Alright, so let's just break down the simple things, guys. There's a really easy Fairy Dragon Steel Core there. Sizzle, Togekiss, Kyurem. It's very aggressive, but it's also very effective. All of those can be defensive as well as offensive, and they all work very well together. You talk about speed tiers with the fact that he can run a lot of things scarfed, but he also has fantastic speed tier in the sense that Thunderous Incarnate is over that base 110, as well as Mega Alakazam, which means that he's forcing his opponents to have to run Scarf Pokemon. Defensively speaking, his Firewater Grass Core is actually really nice, with Arcanine, Seismitoad and Vileplume. The one big issue I see with his team is the fact that he only has 2 ground immunities, and they are both weak to rocks. Furthermore, his 2 ways of dealing with hazards are both defog, which means that any kind of additional hazard he wants to try and put down and be annoying is probably going to be irrelevant. But other than that, I think, he has a really diverse course. I actually really like the combination of Seismitoad and Vileplume. I think that's actually a really, really nice combo there. Miltank is obviously a very solid choice. And I feel like, especially adding Pangoro, which is a terrifying member to add to this team, I feel like there's no real bad Pokemon on this team. Each one has a purpose, each one can do a job, so I do rate this one very, very highly. I think the synergy maybe isn't ideal, but it is just a lot of threats stacked together and some pretty low tier walls that could still work together, because in this kind of format, the tiers that your walls are in doesn't really matter. It's how you can actually use them against your opponent, in my opinion. But let us move on next up to the Honolulu Hawluchas, and initially I was pretty excited for this team. I saw Jirachi and Kyurem Black get taken, but in my opinion, I think it actually became a little bit lackluster with the rest of the picks. But let me know what you think.
So I like you said, Jirachi, Kyurem Black, and I like that Slowbro is on the team as well. That creates a pretty solid core between them. I like the speed tier with Crobat. You can really run a bulky Crobat to handle a lot of things with stuff like Super Fang or Brave Bird. That really makes it nice. And then he's got a really slow Volt Turner in Electros that can absorb some hits and then Volt Switch into someone that is going to do damage to that person. I also like his Weezing pick. I think Weezing is definitely one of those underrated Pokemon. I don't like Ariados as a sticky web setter. It's a little too frail and slow. And the rest, like, I agree with you on the rest of the team. So I think he's going to end up having like a 6 Pokemon team every week. Like, I just don't see him bringing a lot of the other Mons other than, the 6 that really stand out.
Yeah, the main issue with this team for me is that Blissey, Slowbro, Electros, and Weezing, 4 of his most prominent walls, are all absolute setup fodder. Like, literal, the easiest setup fodder you can probably find out. Electros is debatable because, yes, you could run Super Fang on Electros, and that's great. But the fact that Weezing, Slowbro, and Blissey, his main defensive core, are all so easy to set up on. Like, literally, you bring a Pokemon that has higher than base 100 HP stat, set up a sub on Blissey, Seismitoss won't break it. And then you can just troll that thing. Slowbro is pretty much walled as well. I do like the picks of Jirachi, Kieran Black, Emboar, and Mega Altaria. Those ones, definitely a fan of. And Crobat too. I feel like if you got Crobat, I don't really understand the Weezing pick then. It didn't really make too much sense to me to pick up a Poison Levitator when you already have a Poison Flying type. But each to their own. I do like Exploud. I just feel that he's going to need the Sticky Webs in order for it to actually be good. Because a lot of people have drafted very, very solid Steel types to be able to deal with Exploud. Even some people drafting really good Rock types too. I've used Electros, and I do, like, it is a good slow Volt Switcher, but that can also be really detrimental for it, because in this format, he could use some fast Electrics, and without Sticky Webs, and without Crobat, his team is actually very, very slow, with Jirachi being the next fastest with only base 100 speed, which you might think is a lot, but compared to a lot of other teams, that is incredibly lackluster. And the other big issue that I want to point out is the fact that his only way of getting up Stealth Rocks is either with Blissey or Jirachi, which means that he's either bringing defensive Blissey every week, or he has to bring Stealth Rocks on Jirachi every week, which really limits Jirachi's creativity. So for me, it's just like he took a bunch of Mons that he knew was good in the format, slapped them together, but has kind of forgotten about synergy, in my opinion. I know it's a bit harsh, but that's just how I see it.
Well, and I actually did the interview with him and talked with him about it. He's aware that his team is... He doesn't actually even like running slow teams like this. So he's aware that kind of happened. He said he got sniped quite a bit and he got kind of flustered. So we're going to see some trades for sure coming up.
I think I'll definitely help his team, because I'm not trying to, like, guys, I'm not trying to bash on people. I'm trying to be honest, because at the end of the day, people don't want to hear you just constantly saying, oh, your team's great, you're going to do great. They'd rather hear you say, okay, here's how you can actually improve your team to make it better. I feel that, over time, I've learned that's the more important thing people want to hear, is that constructive criticism. And I think deep out in leagues that you've been in, it's the same thing, right?
Oh, yeah. And, like you said, I mean, we're not trying to bash anyone particular. We're just trying to say this is what you need to catch up. Yeah,
for sure. Anyway, let's move on to the Texas Nightmare here. What a crazy name for a team. That's kind of wild. But their squad is looking, it's certainly different. It's definitely different. How do you feel about this team?
I feel like he's got a lot of glass cannons and not a lot of walls to protect it.
There's literally a Vaporeon, and that's the only wall I see.
Yeah, I mean, you can run Flygon defensively, and that will kind of cover it a little bit, but not enough to cover his glass cannons.
I will say one thing though, hyper offensively speaking, this is going to be a very hard team to wall. I think you can bring a lot of these threats week in, week out, and it's definitely going to be a tough team to actually break through, because you normally think, like, with hyper offense, okay, if they got no defense, it should be really easy to get through them. But even with a team full of just really, really strong attackers, they can actually bust through teams quicker than you can expect. And he actually does have some really nice balance. I like that he has Zip Striker plus Flygon as 2 parts of a Volt Turn core, easily being able to get out to those heavy hitters like Gengar and Alakazam and rip through teams. And I really like Mega Steelix as an electric check. It is incredibly underrated and actually pairs really nicely with Vaporeon. So although it's not the most ideal team, I actually feel like it's going to be one of the harder ones for a lot of opponents to deal with, because of the sheer amount of offense and diversity this team has. I'm not a huge fan of Jumpluff on the team. I don't mind Ninetales because I think it might be able to get Drought. But yeah, the Jumpluff I feel not the best pick. I think he could have definitely picked up, you know, something like Gorgeist or something down there. You know, it could have been a bit better for him. But beggars can't be choosers, I suppose. But is there anything about this team that you're excited to see? Like you're looking forward to seeing him try and do? I mean,
I think he's going to be probably one of my favorite people to watch based on his team. And the reason I say that is he's either going to get, you know, 5 and 6 O's or it'll be the reverse, because, you know, it all depends on his opponents predicting what he's going to bring. I really think that's what's going to be. And going back to, you know, talking about like the Boston Keldeos versus this team, I mean, that's pretty much just a straight loss, because
it's going to be tough.
Like a ghost.
It's going to be tough.
Yeah.
Especially
So
Gengar against that team. Gengar does rip through the Boston Keldeos so hard, but that's where, you know, techs like Scarf Victini could be good, but then the Nightmare could predict that and bring, say, like Flash Fire, Ninetales. So it's all about the team building and predicting aspects of this stuff. So
Absolutely.
let's move on though, because we have next Kohona and the Violet City Moltres. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a huge fan. Like, I was already bagging Hyper Offense, but I'm also really not a huge fan of Stall in this format, and I feel like this team, although there are a few good kind of offensive Pokemon, is looking incredibly Stall based.
Yeah, I definitely see that. I mean, it's hard for me to hate on a team that picks my mascot, but, you know. I agree with you. I think the combination of Clefable and Cresselia and Mega Sableye, I mean, it's going to be one of those matches where even if you do the post-com, it's going to be a 30-minute battle.
Yeah, I think the only offensive Pokemon, like Clefable can obviously, like, Clefable, Cresselia, Mega Sableye can obviously be offensive guys, but the premise is that they're incredibly bulky and hard to break through, paired with things like Tentacruel as well, and Hitmontop is just a nightmare. I feel Electivire is a good budget pick. Not a huge fan of Archeops or Moltres, but I'm sure Moltres was more a mascot pick, if anything. I do like Tornadus Eye. I think it's pretty underrated for the points it's worth. Diggersby isn't too bad for his team, and obviously Superior is a really nice breaker. So like, it's an interesting little hybrid team that he has here. I'm not like the biggest hater, but I'm also not the biggest fan, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like,
No,
I
I
feel
agree.
he's trying to make it semi-stall to the point where it's like, yeah, I've got all these bulky walls that can do this job. But the big thing for me is that his team actually has a really frustrating time against, you know, again, it's another team where they only have one switch into fairies. I don't count Moltres because if that thing comes in on rocks, that's not fun. And Tentacruel is the only real switch into a fairy type. And it's just a team that I feel, again, like Cresselia, Tentacruel, Mega Sableye, they are fodder for setup Pokemon. So it's definitely a cool idea. And I think Kohona will win a lot of battles against people who don't know how to break his team. But against the more experienced battlers here, I think they will find it quite easy to be able to literally set up on Kohona's team and get a victory. But I mean, time will tell. I think it's a okay team, but definitely not the best team he could have drafted, I feel, with what he was trying to do.
I would like to see him either drop Moltres or Archeops. I think the two together don't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing like even Archeops drop for something like Rhydon, because even Rhydon wouldn't be too bad because it's an extra ground type, which would be nice for his team. An extra Stealth Rocker as well would be pretty solid, because from the looks of it right now, his only ways of setting up hazards is Archeops, Clefable, Diggersby, and Tentacruel, because people forget that Diggersby actually gets access to spikes.
Yeah, or a Steel type. I mean, Archeops could be dropped for a Steel type.
That is true. Not many like budget Steel types. I mean, I would prefer to see something like Moltres dropped for, you know, if Registeel or something was still around. I don't think it is, but, you know, some kind of decent Steel type down there I think would be better. But anyway, we're going to move on, as we're actually over the halfway point, man. We're cruising through this right now. It's pretty good. So next up we have the Chicago Flock. Now, this team makes me angry, so you talk about it first so I can just calm down.
Yeah. Well, so I also did the interview with him, and he did not realize that he was doing this until, like, 3/4 of the draft. But, I mean, like, you bring in, like, a Conkeldurr on this team, and it's pretty much Gigi. I mean, there's not a lot of answers for it. He's got way too many dark types. I mean, yeah. I like Mega Absol. I think it's one of the best not tier 1 megas. He's got Alomola. I hate saying that.
Alomomola.
Yeah, gracious. I just the Hawaiian fish, that thing.
Yeah.
And I like Deblade. Like, I like that. But I think he's really got to look at his tier 2, tier 3 picks and evaluate what he can change, because I mean, like an Infernape or a Conkeldurr or Blaziken or any of the serious fire or fighting types is just gonna run through his team.
All right, let's not beat around the bush here. The combination basically of a fighting type and a fairy type destroys his team. It's quite simple. For example, let's look at the New York Metagross. Sylveon plus Hitmonlee pretty much decimates his entire team by itself. Like, it's a straight up fact. I think he has a couple of good things. I actually really like Crawdaunt in this format, as well as Volcarona. What I don't like is that he is relying on a Defogger that is weak to rocks and a freaking Maldo to get rid of hazards. That's not ideal. I think he's also relying on Mega Absol to be able to actually stop hazards from going up, but most of your standard rock setters aren't going to care about an Absol, to be completely honest. Deblade's really nice to check the fairies, but again, it is like his only decent fairy check, and with a lot of these guys using really solid fairy type choices, all it takes is one decent prediction to a hidden power ground or a hidden power fire, and Deblade's taking a chunk, with his only way being able to heal, being able to rest talk, so obviously not ideal. I just think it's very, very disjointed. I think though it's the same boat as like the Texas Nightmare though, in the sense that offensively speaking, it is pretty scary. Like, you got Slurpuff that can set up, you got Honchkrow, which is terrifying. Thundurus Therian is no slouch. Crawdaunt hits so hard as a wall breaker, so there is still that serious threat from these water and dark types. And it's not just like saying, okay, I'll get a grass and a fighting type to deal with these, because he's got Honchkrow, he's got Mandibuzz, he's got Volcarona that can deal with both of those typings. So it's definitely, it shouldn't be too hard of a team to prep for, but I feel it's still going to be an interesting team to watch this season, for sure.
Yeah, I think with a few decent trades, the team will be patched up pretty decently, but he's just got too many weaknesses to the same things.
For sure. Alright, let's get into the home straight. We've got 6 more teams to talk about, so let's start with the runner-up of last season, Adam and the Kansas City Cocooners. How do you feel about this team?
I think it's a scary team, personally. I wish he had a more solid fairy type. I don't like Aromatisse as a fairy type. And Primeape can put in some work, but I don't like that as a fighting type. But the rest of his team, I mean, Manaphy, Skarmory, Entei, Scolipede, Tangrowth, that is a scary beast of a team right there.
So here's my issue with this team, and I'm taking you guys on a little story down memory lane. Now, the big issue I find with Adam's team is that he has a couple of good rock setters, right? And he has a Scolipede and a Skarmory that can set up spikes. So it would stand to reason that he would really appreciate not only having, the thing is, he only has Skarmory as a defogger. That's his only form of hazard removal on his entire team. Which means if he goes up against, say, the Seattle Scizors that have Ferrothorn, that basically means that Ferrothorn has the free will to spike stack all over Adam's team, and then it's basically whether Adam's going to flinch first or not, because Seattle Scizors, they have a Donphan that can spin away the hazards after Copperrigus goes down. Whereas the Cocooners, only have a defogger. I recommended to Adam instead of Primeape he should get Hitmonchan as a way of having a decent Rapid Spinner and a bulky Pokemon for his team, and he decided against it. And I feel it's going to come back to bite him because his only way to get rid of hazards basically removes all the hazards he's already set up, and I feel that is incredibly counterproductive and is a major problem for his team.
Yeah, I am just, when I do draft, like, my third pick is usually a Rapid Spinner. You have to have a Rapid Spinner because defog is counterproductive in my opinion.
Like, it's good in some situations, but in a situation where he has two Pokemon that have the opportunity to set up spikes, and a lot of other Pokemon that can set up Stealth Rocks and put on so much pressure on his team, or his opponent's team, then I feel that only having one way to remove hazards, being getting rid of your own as well, is just, it just seems dumb, in my opinion. And I don't mean this as an offensive thing to Adam, but it just seems like really bad planning on his part to want to do that. I think that his team is incredibly solid, and I feel like he's going to be very hard to break down this season. The other big problem with his team, though, is there is a major reliance on Scolipede in this team when it especially comes to speed. Without Scolipede being there, his fastest Pokemon is base 100, which you might think is, you know, decent speed tier. It's really not in this format. It really isn't. It's meaning he's forced to run at least one Scarfer a week if he's not going to bring Scolipede, because I feel Adam's main way that he's going to focus on being able to outspeed things is going to be running Baton Pass, Speed Boost, Scolipede a lot of times to try and use that to his advantage, and I feel it's just going to get old really quick. And the other thing is, he doesn't really have too many Pokemon outside of, say, Primeape, Mesprit, or Crocodile that want to be Scarfed. So, I don't know, I feel like it's an okay team for Adam, but I feel like it's definitely not really knocked my socks off here.
Yeah, on the converse side though, you have Aromatisse and Cofagrigus who can set up Trick Room and do a lot of work that way. So
that is true. That is true, and that does make Tangrowth more of a threat. But it actually is still counterproductive for him because things like Manaphy, Entei, Scolipede, Mesprit, and even Primeape are in an awkward speed tier where they don't really benefit from Trick Room either. So it's basically a flip of a coin for Adam whether he goes with the Trick Room offense or the Scolipede Baton Pass offense. But I feel
he's got
it's an interesting team, but definitely not a team that's gonna, like, it looks scary at first, but when you really look into it, it's not as, you know, terrifying.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. So, like, you know, for example, though, if he goes up against, like, the Nightmare, I mean, all of those Pokemon except for Steelix are fast. So, you know what I mean? Like, a Trick Room on that team would actually work pretty well. So, it just depends on how he uses it, but I do agree with you. He does need a higher speed tier.
Yeah, just, like, something that, I don't know, like, just something that would work there, but I don't really know what would work there. Anyway, let's move on to the Seattle Scissors and Drew, and, you know, we were just talking about speed tiers, and his first two Pokemon are Latios and Raikou. He also has Mega Beedrill. I mean, this team is looking very, very strong right off the bat.
Yeah, and Zoroark's also got a decent speed tier, so.
And Staraptor, and Lucario, with obviously the priority and whatnot, so it's definitely got a lot more balance in his team. Has access to that spin, has a dual Intimidate core with Staraptor and Granbull. Magmortar is a bit of a lackluster fire type choice, but I also feel like it could be a really solid choice because his moveset is quite diverse, which is really nice for him. He has good priority from Staraptor, Donphan, and Lucario. Mega Beedrill I think is going to be really underrated because, you know, say against Adam's team, Adam's best switch into Mega Beedrill obviously is the Skarmory, so Beedrill can go for the U-turn straight into the Raikou for free, being able to, you know, be able to fire off a Thunderbolt or, you know, shit like that. So it just gives his team a lot of versatility, really strong Volt Turn core that he has there, and I'm just definitely a big fan. But what do you feel about the team?
I like it a lot. Like you said, he's got the diversity there. My biggest concern with it is I don't see a really solid wall. I mean, Ferrothorn, yeah, but I mean, you put Hidden Power Fire on anything and it's dead. So I would just like to see something a little bit more bulky as a wall. But other than that, he's got a really good balanced team a lot of really good speed tiers, so he can really make it work. And Pokemon like Staraptor, like Wall Breaker, my goodness. And if you can make Zoroark work on a team, can be extremely frustrating.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, in regards to that wall question you were saying, it looks like his wall core is Ferrothorn, Donphan, Gramble, and Jellicent. Just looking at it, I used Ferrothorn plus Gramble in the first season of the PMC, and I paired it actually with a Spiritomb and a Lomomola for most of the season. They actually worked incredibly well. It was a bit of an awkward core. It didn't seem like the strongest core, but it actually worked quite well together. So maybe he could find a way to make it work, but time will tell if Drew can do that. But let's move on here to the Washington Talon Flames. And one of the important things to note is the Talon Flames actually have 60 points spare left just chilling in their bank, and I definitely feel like using those points they could upgrade a few things here. But what do you think of the initial team?
To me, this team is kind of lackluster. I'm not a huge fan of it. I mean, tell me what you see here that would stop a mold breaking earthquake. I don't really see a lot that I feel could really stop that.
Only like a fully defensive Milotic or maybe Credilli, but Credilli doesn't want to deal with Excadrill, so.
So that's kind of my biggest. I don't know. Like you said, he's got 60 points. I think he could patch it up, but.
You know what my biggest concern is? Tell me what kind of hazard removal he has.
I don't really see much of anything.
There is no hazard removal. That's the whole point. He has no way of getting rid of hazards off his field. That is, like, terrifying me. Like, I would never want to go into a league. Like, all respect to Spencer, I know he's a good guy, but I would never want to go into a league with no way to deal with hazards against people that have shit like Scolipede and Skarmory on their team. Just waiting there to be able to stack and stack and stack on you with you having no way to deal with it. So I definitely feel like he could upgrade things like maybe the Yanmega and the Drapion to Pokemon that maybe obviously a Defogger, even changing Drapion to Skuntank so you have a Defogger on your team, and then maybe getting Yanmega down to like something else or getting a Rapid Spinner. It doesn't really matter. I feel like that's the biggest thing this team's missing. Sure, it's a bit slow, but Mega Aggron's kind of nice. It kind of pairs nicely with my Milotic as well, so he could definitely make it work. I think the main thing he needs to work on though is getting that hazard removal. That's definitely a major thing he's lacking right there, and it is very. I feel scared for him.
Yeah, I can't imagine going into a draft and leaving 60 points, and like you said, I didn't even notice the no hazard removal. You can't do that. I mean, you can't do that in just a 6v6, much less a league.
Alright, well, we're going to move on, and we're going to move on to the Shinra Pikachus. Now, their first two picks were Megazard X and Talonflame, pretty much back to back. Now, if that isn't a statement, I don't know what is. What do you feel about this team?
It's interesting. I actually think the Zards are very controversial in League. I think X is the better choice because once you Mega Evolve, it's not as big a weakness. But I don't understand why you'd put Talonflame on with Zard. It doesn't make any sense at all to me. Like, there's other parts of his team that I really like Florges and Goodra. That is an excellent core, and having Excadrill to complete that steal is really good. And I think Zard X covers a lot of those weaknesses that they cover each other very well. I just don't get the rest of his team.
Well, I can try and shed light on a little bit of it for you. So, one of the things about Megazard X that makes it so good is it actually has the ability to beat a lot of Pokemon that would be regarded as bird checks. For example, your Rotom Washers, your Lanturns, Pokemon that can deal with both of Talonflame's main stabs, whereas Zard can come in, set up a DD, go for an EQ or a Dragon Claw, and weaken these things to allow Talonflame to come in and do its business. I feel some of the picks that I'm not a huge fan of, Luxray is a big one. I feel he already had Jolteon. There was really no point in getting Luxray. One of the big picks though, I think, and probably the best pick, looking at the rest of his team that he made, was getting Quagsire. And the main reason for that, guys, is that by getting Quagsire on his team, Johan basically made sure that nobody could get it against him and have a good switch into Megazard X, because this team, with Talon Flame and Jolteon especially, has a very good way of Volt turning in Charizard X for a free DD. And that's going to be the big scary part. He has not the most reliable hazard removal. I feel like he could get rid of Luxray and maybe get a low tier defogger. I think would be really smart for him, because I honestly really like seeing a diverse Excadrill, and I don't really want to just see the classic rapid spinning drill every single week. Like, it's not something I want to see. Basically, his team can get shut down by a Pokemon that sets up rocks and has a solid bulky ghost type to deal with Excadrill, so definitely an issue there for Johan, but maybe he'll be able to get through it. I don't know. It's a cool team, very dangerous offensively, but yeah, like you said, defensively, definitely some holes. But let's have a good little talk, because the champion from last season, CJ, his team is looking pretty darn fresh. I'm not gonna lie, like, I did help him a fair bit. Like, we were talking about certain things you could draft in like a pre-draft chat, and he was having a good chin wag to me. Oh, sorry, chin wag is like an Australian term. It's like good talk.
Okay.
I forget that I say slang sometimes. He's having a good talk to me about what he wanted, and I feel the overall team here has a hell of a lot of balance to it.
Honestly, and so for season 2 of the PMC, I get first pick. So Mega Lopunny is my first pick. I love Mega Lopunny. It is, I think, the best Mega in all of draft format. I mean, it is a Pokemon unto itself. You don't need to build a team around it. It just hits everything hard. And a lot of the Pokemon he picked are Pokemon that I'm interested in myself. I mean, Gardevoir, you have Healing Wish, you can recover it back up. Amoonguss is an amazing wall. Zapdos is extremely frustrating, especially now that it has static. I mean, you put Rocky Helmet, Discharge, and Static on Zapdos, and it is one of the most annoying walls to deal with. He's got Reuniclus, which is really a good pair for Mega Lopunny, and Haxorus, which is one of the best wall breakers in the game. I mean, I love this team.
Definitely. I think the one big thing that worries me about this team for CJ is, again, he's picked up a lot of very bulky walls that can be exploited. Like, when we're looking at other walls, like your Crocodiles and that, which can be like a dual acting wall. Like, you're never really going to be able to set up on a Crocodile because it can hit you super hard back, and Hippo basically only really has EQ and Stone Age to hit you back with. Amoonguss basically just has Spore and whatnot, so basically bring a safety goals mod, and Amoonguss isn't a big deal. Blastoise again isn't super diverse, neither is Bronzong, so I feel the only issue there with CJ's team is, again, those walls are incredibly one-dimensional, which means that, smart battlers using smart setup sweepers can definitely take advantage of this team. Another thing is, like, if you look at Johan's team, if Zardex gets to +1 and Hippo's weakened, that's going to be a rough ride for CJ to take. But I do really like the pick of Hippowdon with Stoutland. I think Stoutland with Intimidate is very underrated, but also just having the Sandrush Doge is very, very solid for his team. Having Sneasel as well as a Pursuit Trapper is really, really nice. I think one of the things, though, is that outside of, maybe Megalop and Sneasel, the team is a tad slow. Haxorus is below, basically everything else is below that base 100. So, I mean, obviously, like, Stoutland in Sand is faster, but we're looking at Stoutland out of Sand, so definitely he's just got to watch out for that, I feel. But I don't know, I think it is a pretty solid team for CJ. He's just going to make sure he doesn't get set up on.
Yeah, but he's got wall breakers to cover it, I think, so.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's not too detrimental for him.
Yeah.
I don't
So
think.
like for example, I mean if his team if he takes care of the anything that resists a normal type between Stoutland and Lopunny, I mean you put Stoutland in the sand with a choice band and last resort, and it can I mean it almost one shots a Garchomp, a defensive Garchomp. It's ridiculous.
Hmm. No, it's definitely true, man. Alright, let's round this bad boy up. We got one last team to go. It's Turkey's boys from the Toronto Luxrays, and I actually feel like this is going to be the most underrated team in the entire draft. What do you think?
I haven't gotten a lot of time to look at this one, to be honest. I like Mega Gardevoir. I think that's a great pick. I don't get the Magneton and Registeel together, but both of those Pokemon are good. I love Ditto. I think that Pokemon, if you use it right, is a win condition in almost every single situation. And Infernape and Weavile together is terrifying. I mean, they're both gonna die real quick to any kind of priority, but they're still terrifying.
Yeah, definitely. I'll clear up the whole Magneton and Registeel thing. So the basic premise of Magneton is, offensively speaking, Mega Gardevoir basically wins when your opponent's steel types go down. So why not trap them with Magneton, get him out of the way. The other plus side of Magneton in this team over Magnezone is not only is it cheaper, but it will also outspeed max speed normal Scizor, which means that obviously you can trap it, go for that Specs HP Fire, and Scizor is going to get absolutely destroyed by that, and that makes Mega Gardevoir clicking Hyper Voice all the easier. And then Registeel is there basically as his primary fairy check. He does have a Golbat, but I don't rate Golbat that highly, so I feel like Registeel is definitely a big, good check there to be able to deal with that. It also deals with Psychic types really well, as it puts less pressure on Slowking to do it, because a lot of Psychic types have tech such as the Thunderbolt or the Energy Ball or the Grass Knot that they can go for. So that's why I think those two together makes a lot of sense. I think just the whole team in general is really, really solid. The one thing I'm not a huge fan of is that he has 3 Pokemon. Oh, sorry, is it 3 Pokemon? No, it's 4 Pokemon with 4 times weaknesses. And that's a little bit of a worry in a format where it's quite easy to tech on certain moves at certain times. I feel if he doesn't play smart around them, he's going to lose Pokemon very, very easily. So that's definitely something that he will need to watch out for. But I do feel overall it is a very, very solid team.
Yeah, I think he's going to have the same problem that the Metagross do. You know, it's just they've got too many 4 times weaknesses. But
yeah, for sure. Well, that is basically going to do it for our draft recap, guys. As we said, we're not going to go into too much detail. That's going to happen more in the post-draft power rankings, where we're going to look more in depth at each team and say, you know, why we feel they are ranked in a certain position. But I definitely feel from this chat, you can kind of understand the teams that we are currently digging and we're fans of, and also the teams that, you know, we're kind of worried about and interested to see where they go from here. But thank you for joining me for this D-pad, and I will see you back here obviously for the power rankings. Anything you'd like to say before we close off?
no, I think that this is going to be a very exciting season, and I hope everyone watches and subscribes to everyone's channel.
For sure, spread the love, guys, and also check us both out on Twitter. We'll probably leave our Twitter things and also our YouTube channels because we're nice guys. But that is going to do it for us guys here. So next up probably will be the post-draft power rankings again with myself and D-pad, and we're definitely going to get cracking and discussing these teams. But for now, it is the Bird and D-pad Gamer, and we out this bitch.